Welcome to LOA Today. I'm Walt Thiessen.
With me today is life coach and LOA teacher Joel Elston.
This is your daily dose of happy. We are so happy you decided to join us today.
And Joel, I took today's topic from your Facebook timeline, which I so often do because you post pretty good stuff there, and you stimulate the imagination with ideas and thoughts and things. You shared something that was all about just start taking steps, start doing things, start dreaming, whatever the stuff that has to be done, just start, take the action. And I thought that was a good starting point for a conversation, because let's be honest, it doesn't matter what we're talking about, in our lives. We have certain things that we tend to procrastinate about. Maybe we go a little bit further than procrastination. So in those instances, those are the ones where we really do need to be starting and we can't seem to get going. So why don't we get going about getting started?
Certainly. The concept that the 5-second rule, the book I'm a real big fan of, where it talks about, getting up 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 to launch, do stuff. There's several other books. There's several ideas that the brain is predisposed to talk you out of doing things, especially things you don't necessarily want to do. So you have this predisposition to do that, and you defeat that by taking action. I'm very much an action-oriented person. Start, begin, and it doesn't matter what the action is often. Just take some type of action. And where you are, one of the more bizarre things, as you know, I'm in the gym most days of my life, and observing people that will start talking about, well, at the beginning of the year, I want to start working out. Why the beginning of the year? Why not right now? There's no magical thing at the beginning of the year. Or when this event happens, I'm going to do these things. And I'm always baffled by that, because the best time is right now. The action is, based on, it gets you going. Even if it's wrong action, it's an action. And that's, it's an action toward something. I always have, if you're in doubt of something, I have a saying for my clients, have a bias toward action. Don't know what to do? Take action, whatever that action is. Wash your dishes, get gas for the car, take your laundry to the cleaners, whatever the minutia is, even if some type of action gets things going. And human beings, once we are in motion and action oriented, we do have a tendency to stay there. It's easier to get something started when we get going, obviously. It's like when we move, we can keep it going. But this idea that we will sit there and we'll overthink it, or I'll do it later, and it never gets done. And that's what I have to work with a lot. A lot of my clients are ADHD, overthinkers, and we get stuck in the overthinking. We can get stuck in, my frustration comes. Justin and I had an argument, earlier this afternoon. And I realized I was getting frustrated because he was suggesting there's no action. He was, I tried everything. You didn't try anything, but the concept to him is he did. And, trying to get him to see it a little differently, because action is going to, by taking action, by starting, that's where all opportunity, no opportunity can be fulfilled until you start. And we think it needs to be this comprehensive, let me get all my ducks in a row, let me get this going, then I'll take a start or take action. That is the downfall of most people. It's just the literal implementation of it. And that's hard for so many people. Just implement, go. I was working for this addiction treatment center, I don't know, probably 5 or 6 years ago, and they wanted to open up called an IOP, an intensive outpatient program. And the manager or the owner of the facility, I owned a tiny bit of it, but he was the main owner. He wanted everything perfectly set up. He wanted all the groups set up in a certain order with the topic of each one. And my theory was, why don't we just schedule a group as we need, 8 o'clock, 1 o'clock, blah, blah, blah. And we'll start firing away, and we'll adapt as we go. Let's implement. Let's see what's working and what's not working. And he fundamentally could not do that. He wanted to spend, months getting curriculum, and surveying clients. And I'm like, let's begin, let's go. And it was, it was clear to me we had he's a good guy, but very different, work ethics, I guess, or maybe not the term, but belief of how something should take place. He takes forever to implement stuff, and I am just, let's begin. And
by the way, I want to mention one thing. You don't have to be ADHD in order to be an overthinker.
Absolutely. Just so many of my clients have when I say ADHD, anything that's just extra. There's a lot of overthinkers. We do it better than anybody. I mean, we do.
Well, yeah, it's good to have a skill.
Yeah, we do. So if we have intrusive thoughts, we go next level intrusive thoughts. So, just knowing the qualifier, the ADHD just adds 10% at least to everything. That's a random number, of course. But, the idea of I'm a big stress the system guy. Let's see what works. Let's change it. If it doesn't, let's get started. Let's get started today. If you want to go, let's go today. Not 3 weeks from, I have a friend that he's very much, I called and said, hey, you want to grab some lunch? I wanted to talk to you about a few things. He said, well, here, just log on to my calendar and put in some time. And I go, what? I go, let's meet tomorrow. And he's like, well, I can't. I go, really? You can't find, he goes, and so about a month later, he called and said, man, you never logged on to I said, I'm never going to log onto your calendar and put something for 2 months down the road. I'm never going to do that. So if you're able to have lunch tomorrow, I'll have lunch tomorrow. He can't go have lunch tomorrow. His brain won't work that way. And I cannot log into his little calendar and go 2 months later. So we'll probably never have lunch.
Yeah, that actually does become problematic. You got two entirely different mindsets there, and they're just not compatible. Yeah, that's a problem. But what you're saying makes a lot of sense to me. In fact, the whole concept of procrastination fascinated me for many years, as you know, especially from the early years of doing the podcast with me, because it's so easy to be stuck in that place where you just can't seem to get out of that procrastinative mold. But it's a what's the word? It's a momentum. It's sort of a negative momentum. It's a stuck in place momentum.
Yes.
And there's a resistance to overcoming that momentum. That's why it's so hard to break through a procrastination behavior, because the longer you do it, the more stuck you are in it, because it just becomes its own pattern after a considerable period of time. Because of that, I think that becomes like the foundation, the basis for how we justify, well, I can't take action. Like your friend, you have to use my calendar. That's the only possible way to take action.
Right.
And it's simply because of that momentum, or lack of momentum, actually. What's the other, there's a physics term. I can't think what the term is. It means that, there's a resistance to a change in velocity. I can't think what it's called, but that thing, whatever that thing is that I'm trying to remember the name for, that's the thing that stops us. And it stops us in our physical actions. It stops us in our mental actions. And most especially, it stops us with our emotional actions, our emotional, expressions, our emotional, the places where we get emotionally stuck. Because the emotional stuckness, that's what that's what keeps the whole thing jammed right in place where it's not going to go anywhere.
Well, and that's getting people unstuck is one of the number one things I do. And the thinking process that gets people stuck is just, you described it perfectly. When you have, again, a momentum in either direction, that by definition, momentum is continuation. It's we're pushing forward or going backwards, and it gets, breaking that is a simple let's begin, let's get up and go, and watching that happen. I had first time I ever worked with someone who was a hoarder, and I never had really worked with anyone. I've read about it. I've taken some trainings on it, but it's an interesting mindset, sort of an addiction like anything else. And so we were doing a couple of virtual sessions, which I'm not a real big fan of, especially, because I can't get a real feel of the person. So anyway, after a couple of virtual sessions, I said, well, maybe next week I'll come. He didn't want to, he was sort of scared to leave the house. So I said, maybe I'll just come by and meet you there. Oh, no, you can't do that. And I'm like, well, why? And he said, well, I don't want you to see what's inside the house. I said, well, that's sort of what I'm working with you on. So I talked him into letting me come over. And it was quite a bit. There was stuff, there's a little pathway to get back everywhere. There was stuff, all types of stuff. And he goes, it's embarrassing. He said, I just have lost control and I don't know where to begin. And, so I remember seeing this idea one time when a doctor was talking about it. So I had at the time I had a truck, and in the truck I had some rope. So I just went in and got the rope. It's probably a 10-foot rope. I just put the rope around a certain area. I said, all we got to do is take this stuff and put it in the back of my truck. That's all we got to do. Forget the rest of it. And he said, I really need to go through it. And I go, it's like 12-year-old newspapers. We're good. There's nothing you need to go through. Let's go. And, so I talked him into doing it, and it took us maybe 15 minutes to get that one rope section going.
Right.
Out. It was fine. We got in the truck, and he didn't even realize that in the process of taking the truck, he was going outside, which he was afraid to do. So I said, wow, we got a lot done. I said, you want to tackle another section? So we put the rope in another section. We did it. We ended up doing 4 sections. My truck got filled up, and I said, look, why don't you ride with me to the dump to help me unload this stuff? And without thinking, he gets in the truck and we're having a conversation. He unloads it, and he realized, he said, oh my God, I haven't left the house in 2 years, and now I'm doing this. And we get back to the house, and a big section has been cleaned out. And it started with just taking that rope and just go here, right here, just a tiny little bit of something gave the momentum. And, I didn't want to, that's not my specialty, but I did, his family was all on board. We hired somebody to help do that same concept, and we got rid of all the stuff. And, he also was able to get out more. So it eventually led to, but he was stuck for like 2 or 3 years and could not move past that. And
I remembered what the word was, the physics term. It's inertia. I couldn't think of that word. Yeah. But inertia, people know that as an object in motion tends to stay in motion, an object at rest tends to stay at rest. One of the Newtonian laws. And that inertia is a perfect metaphor for that feeling that you can't change, that you can't shift. But the key element to that is what changes inertia is applying external force.
Yes.
And that's exactly what you did. You put that rope around the stuff and said, let's move this stuff out. And that became the external force that shifted the inertia, basically ended the inertial tendency.
Yes. And that is whether the inertia of when you have a belief that there is no answer to a problem. It's like, I had a young man today. He's depressed. He says, I'm depressed. And I think about dying every day. So I'm not going to kill myself, but I think about that every day. So, okay. So do you want to talk to a psychiatrist? No, I don't want to do antidepressants. Are you exercising? That's helped some people. No, I can't make myself exercise. And so after I went through everything that's going to be an option, I said, so basically you're a victim of your depression. There's no action to take. You just have cut off any possibility of action, any movement forward, because you have just made up your mind. All the remedies you just have dismissed them. And, he wasn't real pleased with our conversation, but I said, at some point you have to be able to begin something. And I don't really care which way we go, but you got to be able to begin something. And, hopefully I would be able to break through with him at some point. But it was this idea that he had no options and could not begin anything, which really leads to this idea that I'm just a victim of this consequence, and I have no power. And and I know that's part of depression. Depression wants to convince you of that, but being able to accept that something's got to change for there to be a change in your mindset, and that whatever that's going to be, again, I'm not opposed to any of the actions that could be taking place, but there has to be, I'm going to begin today.
There's an irony to this too. The irony is that the victim mindset feels powerless. And
Yes.
yet being able to apply your mind, admittedly in a dysfunctional way, that basically precludes any possible action takes a tremendous amount of intense concentration to do that.
Yes.
Which is exactly the diametric opposite of being a victim.
Yes. Yes.
So essentially what it really comes down to is recognizing the power that you are already exerting over yourself to prevent yourself from getting better.
Yes. Yes. And that's, that's the, the power of starting is one of the biggest things of overriding a belief. When you, when people that I worked with a lady one time is 400 and something pounds, and she didn't know where to begin. She said, I want to stop, but I don't know where to begin. And so we started with, well, let's stop drinking soda. Let's just drink water instead of soda. Let's start with that. And we looked at her phones, and the day before she had a total of 300 steps. I said, so today let's get 350 steps. Let's just whatever. And so we went with water, we had steps, and then once we had a little momentum of the start, then she said, look, I got to 350 steps, and I realized I could do a lot more. So I ended up with 800 steps today, which is more than I've done in a year. So now the mentality is I have action.
Yeah.
And so she's able to do that. And then from water, she's also, with no soda, she said, I'm also going to stop eating chips, because chips is one of the biggest things I eat all day. So once one action started, then multiple actions, and over a period of 2 years, 2.5 years, she lost 200 and some odd pounds.
Wow.
And looked fantastic, felt fantastic. And, but it began with, she was never going to do that until she started. And starting is the biggest impediment, because the brain and all that's involved. It's like you said, it's a huge hill to overcome. It's like, I gotta begin the inertia. I gotta apply force, and that force seems overwhelming.
So for somebody listening in who recognizes that in some way they need to overcome their own inertia, but they're feeling like they really can't do it. I mean, the first thing obviously is to find somebody to help you to do it, which is in and of itself a big challenge, because if you're in that mindset in the first place, there's probably shame and all that kind of thing attached to it. But let's just assume for the sake of discussion that this hypothetical listener is able to ask somebody for help. Okay. Right. Let's say you're the person who's being asked for help. How do you help that person? How do you help them take that first step?
Well, depending on what scenario we're looking at, we obviously look for the simplest. I want something where there's an easy success, a low bar of achievement, in the beginning, just to have some kind of a win. If you walked 350 steps yesterday, walk 375, just something to say, wow, to be able to give a reward system of, I did something. Whatever it's going to be, there has to be some little victory. So you try to find out what we're dealing with. If we're using weight as an example, then one lady was drinking probably, just the 24 case of Mountain Dew, all day in one day, just rig them off. So she wasn't, she said, look, I don't think I'm going to be able to stop Mountain Dew all the way. So I said, why don't we go from 24 a day to one Mountain Dew, one bottle of water, one Mountain Dew, one bottle of water, and stuff like that. And she could do that. And then then we got to a point where it's like one Mountain Dew, two bottles of water, one Mountain Dew, and then she was able to eventually, she took the route of going diet Mountain Dew, which I don't think is a lot better, but we eventually got her all the Mountain Dew. And that drastically changed everything, mainly because her perspective is, I do have power here. And that's the thing. And
that's the change.
Yeah. When the change to me is when somebody, when you declare helplessness, when you declare there's no movement forward, that's the hardest thing to deal with. What is that next step? Any step. You can't take a wrong step when there is no action. When you're sitting still, any step is okay. It has to be something.
So let's ask a hypothetical here again. Let's say that for whatever reason you're feeling like, direct action on, in this case, you were talking about losing weight. So direct action on losing weight. Let's just say that seems impossible. Does it make sense to try to do something unrelated to losing weight that is different, that just shakes up your routine?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. I often say one of the most therapeutic things you can do is go wash your dishes.
Mm-hmm.
If preferably old fashioned style, but if not, put them in the dishwasher, get it started, wipe off the counter. And then, while you're at it, let's see if we can't, but let's get the dishwasher started. Let's do that. Can we wipe off the counter? See if anything gains momentum. It's disrupting the paralyzed state, the seemingly paralyzed state, disrupting it by anything. I will, when you have somebody take that concept of it's the brain we're working with or working against here. We're working against a belief system. So, I can't do anything and then say, look, I got the dishes washed and I wiped down the counter and then I ended up cleaning the stove or whatever. You'll be shocked that even if it has nothing to do with what we're trying to work on, there becomes a belief that I do affect that. And I can use the fact that, those dishes have been sitting there for a week and you made a move. You took action. You did that. Great job. You disrupted. Usually the person that I'm actually thinking about with the dishwasher would wait till there's absolutely nothing left and then we'll run the dishwasher. Last minute had to. Well, got her to run the dishwasher when it was, when it was just normally full, and it was still there. So that made it feel better. Changing this sounds sort of weird. This one lady said that she would, in her bathroom, she had hundreds of empty toilet paper rolls. Hundreds. So she'd just get a new roll of toilet paper, just never put it on the roll thing, just put there, and then it was done. She'd throw the toilet paper roll on the ground and just that was her thing. And she didn't, and she felt helpless. And I said, well, why don't we on your way upstairs next time, take a garbage bag and get the empty rolls off the ground. And, she said that was shockingly hard. And even though they have no weight, they're nothing to them.
Sure.
But once I got them off the ground, then I realized I need to start putting my toilet paper on the roll. Then I realized I need to clean my tub. Then I cleaned the toilet. And within an hour, my whole bathroom was done.
Yeah.
And I started with getting the rolls off the ground. And so she was able to move forward because, again, the inertia of going forward is easier to maintain.
Yeah. Because when you have something that is a positive pattern and it starts disrupting the old pattern and reinforcing itself as a new pattern,
yes,
it becomes its own energy. It becomes its
own
thing. Yeah.
It does.
Yeah, very true. Now, for somebody who is dealing with this, let's look at this from another perspective. For someone who is trying to overcome all the negative feelings, all the negative emotions, all the shame, all that kind of stuff, there are a lot of different things you can try to do to just kind of shake things up. I'm wondering what happens if you start internally. Like if is there something that you can shake up internally to change the pattern and then have that manifest itself in terms of external action world?
It may be, but there tends to be, in my mind, there has to be a physical thing to be really effective. If somebody's way down, maybe a change of thought, but usually that's that concept that keeps you stuck within the brain. The part that's keeping you stuck is generally not the part that's going to allow you to fix it. You got to step outside of the part that's keeping you stuck, which is the brain. So, it's going to be resistant to just, oh, well, I'm thinking much differently now. Let's go for it. It's not going to, I'm going to say it can't work, but it's almost like the guy that wants to plan for months and months. You can get stuck in that process real fast.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And those of us who are overthinkers know all about that.
Yes. And it's easy to. I mean, it seems productive on some level to overthink or overplan, and but once you realize the action of starting, it brings a whole lot of momentum. Your mood changes. The body does have now a bias toward action. It wants more action. A bias toward movement. It wants more movement. It has instead of boy, let me just sit here. Let me get up and get something done. It has a whole different feeling. And then I actually can do something is big. So trying to convince people they have power instead of being the victim of, and of whatever. I have never seen a situation that is truly helpless, but there's a lot of people that believe their situation is completely helpless, and they can't take that first movement forward.
I'm reminded of a story that Mike Dooley tells. Of course, we're both fans of Mike Dooley, and in Mike Dooley's story, he's trying to describe how to complete a trip when you don't know how to get to the place you're getting to. Literally, his story is about you're in your car and you need to get from, say, New York to Los Angeles, and you aren't sure how to get to Los Angeles from New York. So you get out your phone and turn on the GPS and you say, maps, take me to Los Angeles, and it starts to direct you. But it doesn't start to direct you until you actually start to drive the car.
Right.
So he says, engage the car, start driving, and even if you're driving in entirely the wrong direction, the GPS direction is going to say, make a legal U-turn.
Yes. Yeah.
And that's exactly. That's the value of starting, because it doesn't matter if you're going in the wrong direction. As long as you're paying attention to the guidance you're getting, and you're going to get that from a lot of different places, but whatever that guidance source is, if you're listening to it, if you're paying attention to it, it's going to say, well, you're just going the wrong direction. Make a U-turn. Yeah.
Well, there's a couple of things when people want to go to the gym. I talked about fitness earlier. Well, I need to get a trainer. I need to go do these things. And those could be helpful tools, but go to the gym. The machine, look at the machines. Ask the guy there. There's people there to show you you don't need to pay a trainer. You could, but there's people there that'll show you. Mm-hmm. Take some action, get started. And then if you're really, if you need that additional motivation, it's great to hire a trainer. It can be very, very beneficial. But the idea that you need that to get started, or, it's part of that blocking thing that goes on in the brain. You're just blocking and blocking and blocking, and starting defeats that. So like doing paperwork or when taxes are due, that's always my hardest thing, is getting, I know it's going to be about 4 hours, me getting everything together. I usually get done a little faster than that, and I, get frustrated along the way. But I get it there. And then once I get going in the process, I sort of enjoy it in a weird way. Once I get going.
Yeah. And well, I think a lot of people can identify with that. I certainly have had my own history with doing tax returns and not liking it. I calculated it out one time. I found out it wasn't actually taking me hours. When I actually sat down to do it, it was taking me 20 minutes. But somehow my brain turned it into hours. My brain said, this could take days. This could take
days. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Again, we've come across one of the mechanisms we're talking about, that same mechanism. Your brain's convincing you it's helpless. There's hours of work here. And, and what I always tell people, and I remind myself of this as well, I run my stuff through TurboTax, and then I have my accountant go double check it. That's my system. That's what he wants me to do. So once you put in on TurboTax all your income, before you put any expenses or any deductions, it starts showing you how much money you owe. So it could be, when you put it in, I've seen the most ridiculous number.
Oh, yeah. It can knock your socks off.
Yeah. So, one year you had a really good year, and I looked at it, and as soon as I put it in, I was like, I can't, I'm not going to be able to pay that. That was a lot of money. Well, I have quite a bit of office rent. I have quite a bit, so once I start chipping away at it, it still was a huge sum, but it wasn't anywhere where it began. So I have to remind myself every year psychologically, once I start my taxes and I put in all the income, that number is going to pop up, and I just need to not pay any attention and ignore it, because it can really trigger you and think, this is going to be a bad time.
I hear you. Well, I use another tax software. I use the H&R Block. One of the things I like about the H&R Block that helps me get past this exact point is it runs through what they call, a wizard, one of these things that takes you step by step. And when you work through the wizard, it doesn't show you the total until you're done.
Good.
So you don't get 10. Now, I find ways, I can still find ways to drive myself crazy. So I'll leave the wizard and I'll go take a look, which is the worst thing I can do. But as long as I'm willing to stay within that little step-by-step process, it
Right.
won't show me that horrible number. So by the time I get there, it's like, oh, I got a refund. Okay.
Well, I've never got that part, but I do, you get it to a reasonable, and I pay quarterly taxes. So, that first number doesn't include the amount of taxes I've already paid, which is a significant number.
Huge.
So, yeah, so it's just but it's a psychological game. And the reason I'm discussing that is sometimes when you take action, there will seem to be overwhelming things that are there that aren't really overwhelming. And you need to just have the faith to continue with.
Yes, exactly right. The funniest thing too, for me, where the tax software is concerned, like I said, if I actually time out and work diligently and get through the whole thing, it only takes me about 20 minutes. Right now, I'm down to 2 small businesses that I throw in. I used to have 4 that I would throw in. It would still only take me 20 minutes. The hardest part, the slowest part was printing out the income and expenses from each of the businesses, which took a whole 5 minutes to do that. but it seemed like hours. It seemed like huge amounts of time. The one time that I did allow myself to time it, and I looked at my clock, I said, I must have remembered the wrong time. It can't be only 20 minutes.
Yeah.
Even after I experienced, my brain wanted to talk me out of it.
Yes. Well, I have never had, and you can also get to a place like when you go to the gym long enough, there's no longer a decision of going to the gym. It's just built into your schedule. I don't wake up every day thinking, I think I'll go to the gym today. It's just what I do, right? But usually early in the gym process, you have to make a decision every day to go. And that's where you can get tripped up. I've been going for 40 years now. So I don't think about going to the gym. I just get in my car and suddenly I'm at the gym and I work out and I come home. It's just, I go to work. It's that simple process for me. So once you do action enough or start things, everything for me is just taking action, period. Just go, start. It's easy, but it takes a while to get the brain primed to do that.
And then when we're dealing with that kind of inertia, because that's really what that is, overcoming that inertia, it's like the story that you told about the hoarder. I actually went through a thing where I wasn't quite a hoarder, but I had a really messy apartment. No, it wasn't an apartment; it was a condo at one point, and got help to get it cleaned out. But it was really painful the first time that I was trying to do kind of the same thing you talked about. We didn't use a rope, but we were just isolating. Okay, we're just going to do this section, then we're going to just do this section, and so on and so forth. And each section, for the first minute or so, I was experiencing bodily pain, facing, okay, I got to do this thing. Right. And then there would be improvement, and then I'd feel better about it. And then I'd come to the next session, and I'd go through the same cycle again. For about 30 seconds, I'd feel pain. And then with the help of my friend, I was taking steps and cleaning, and and that section would get better. And then I go to the next section, and once again, feeling pain for about 30 seconds while taking action, and then it would get better and better and better. I mean, this happened over and over again. It's basically how we did the entire condo. It was amazing to me how strong, how persistent that pattern was. Now, the pattern did get less and less with each section that we worked on. But each time I still went, it was almost like I had to go through an electric shock each time before I could do something. And I felt like that rat that was trapped in the maze, I don't want to go there. I'm going to get that electric shock again. It almost felt like that.
Well, and that, that is definitely something that you have to break through, and starting and moving and action can eventually, everything is stored, as we know, in the brain. So a negative experience, that shock feeling or whatever, it's there until it's not there. Right. It's like when I was working for my father in the insurance agency, that was a really horrible experience for all of us back in the day. None of us came out well from that experience, but, the Sunday night before I went to work on a Monday morning I cannot describe how stressful and horrible that was. It was I would get a headache, a bad migraine the night before. I had so much stress. I mean, I had a lot going on, and I've been embezzling from the company. I had a lot of stuff happening.
Right.
And so the thought of showing up Monday morning was just horrible to me. And then I would get there, and Mondays were, at the time, they were generally going to be even worse than I anticipated. They were always horrible.
Mm-hmm.
And I was always running to put out fires. And I'd get off from work at the end of the Monday just going, I was being tortured, it felt like.
Right.
So that life ended, and, I moved on. But the inertia of hating Mondays took forever. Even when I got other jobs, even when I didn't have to work on Monday for a while, it was like, oh, I hate Mondays. Why do you hate Mondays? Well, I was conditioned to hate Mondays.
Mm-hmm.
And so over the years, I post this often. Monday is my favorite day now. I like Mondays. I appreciate Mondays. I have grown to love Mondays because I like what I do. They can be stressful, but I don't dread Mondays at all any longer. And that's such a drastic leap from where we were. But it took a long time to reprogram my perspective of Monday, and, going going in with the right attitude toward Monday. I don't know how many people I hear, oh, here's another Monday. What's going to go wrong? You'll invite that. You'll invite some of that. So a lot of this stored stuff, belief system, is part of what's keeping us stuck and anchored. And starting feels the opposite, like getting up early on Monday, getting going, getting out the door, being excited about Monday, what's going to come your way. Those are things that I'm hopeful that we can, if you look at it that way, it does, all of a sudden Mondays become pretty exciting.
It's also a bit reassuring too, because like we've both described through the examples we just gave, it can be pretty overwhelming each time that we're trying to take a new step, new start, because we're feeling all that old inertia and all the pain associated with it just popping up over and over again. But I think it's also reinforcing in a positive way to know that the more consistently that we do it every single day, the more consistently we take a start every single day to do something, the pain grows less and the reward grows more day by day.
Yes.
It's important to recognize that. It's important to see it, because if you don't pay attention to that, you're just working against yourself. But that data is there for you so that you can recognize, wow, I really am making progress. This really can be used to my benefit. Yes.
And that's the, it's like the idea we were talking earlier about anxiety and depression. Mm-hmm. I was on a podcast with some other people not involved with you, just talking about my general practice and what I was doing. And so this lady, who had, severe anxiety and depression, she was saying, well, how did you get rid of your anxiety and depression? And I said, for me, I tried everything, and proper exercise, nutrition, meditation, taking action, getting started. Action is a catalyst against anxiety. Action is a way to extinguish anxiety. And so I was explaining this concept, and she interrupted me, and she goes, that didn't work for me. And I said, well, I'm sorry it doesn't work for you. I thought the question was, what did I do? And she said, well, it is, but you're suggesting that I could cure and she's the host of the show. So I'm,
yeah, right.
And I'm like, I'm sorry if I'm upsetting you. I am telling you what works for me. I am by no means a doctor that could even diagnose or deal with you. So I'm sorry that is your case. I'm telling you what worked great for me, and I cured my depression and I cured my anxiety with those actions. And if it does pop back up, I have ways to deal with it. I'm sorry but she was defending her victimhood in that and was furious that I would even suggest that somebody could possibly get better without that.
Though that's actually fairly common, though. Someone who does have some kind of a victimhood psychology going on will vigorously defend it because again, it's scary to go outside of it, and we build up so many fears about going outside, changing the pattern, and so forth. That's one of the things that holds us in place.
Yeah, it really does. So getting people out of believing that this is your lot in life. What a horrible, sad ways. It's sad to believe that you're helpless and you're a victim and no action or beginning anything would change it. And unfortunately, a lot of traditional psychology today sort of supports that on some level. And, like, well, yeah, none of this is your fault. And it's like, well, gosh, we talked about blame last week, I think.
Right.
I'm not trying to say it's your fault, but who's fixing this? I mean, if are you going to magically be fixed? Or are we waiting for you say there's none of this works, but what action are we going to take? What can I do to take action? And it really gets a feedback loop going that this is my lot in life. And I have one of the ladies that I have on Facebook. I don't really know who she is, but she will occasionally comment on my page. And when I say something positive, she'll give this long paragraph how her entire life she's been rejected. Her birth mother gave her up and all and she just goes on and on. And I mean, I don't ever delete anybody's comments or posts. All I can say is I'm sorry that happened. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
But nowhere in there is she accepting any responsibility, or it isn't her fault her mother left her or abandoned her. It isn't her fault. But what am I going to do about it? What am I going to change? Am I going to sit here all day and just look at that? And it's, and I have the hardest time, with that victim mindset. That's the hardest thing I have to deal with. When
I know for myself, one of the biggest breakthrough points for me was, and this is right in line with what you're saying. This is what worked for me. I'm not saying it's going to work for anybody else, but this did really make a big difference for me. Is when I finally came to the recognition that all of the effort and time and energy I was putting into defending my victim mindset was teaching me just how painful my victim mindset was. Mm-hmm. In other words, what made the difference was recognizing this tendency that I have in my mind to stay stuck hurts more than anything. Mm-hmm. There's nothing else in my life that hurts as much. When I finally recognized that, that's when I said, well, okay, I don't like any of this change I have to make, but it sure is better than a hell of a lot better than staying where I am right now. Because
that is the worst. That's so perfectly said. And I'm so glad you said that, because the idea that I have experience, it's not a competition, I've experienced depression, severe anxiety, suicidal depression and anxiety. I've really been on the edge of doing that. If anybody is feeling that way, of course, please reach out to someone and call 911. It's a horrible way to live, when you don't want to live. And it's a terrible mindset. But if you get stuck in, there's nothing I can do, then this is the rest of your life. This is how it's going to be for the rest of your life. I have watched people just lose everything mentally and really everything in general because they believed that they were stuck in something that they could not change. And that is very sad. And back to the lady on the radio show, at one point when I told her I cured my depression and anxiety with the method I use, exercise, nutrition, all that, meditation, she goes, "Oh, well, you didn't have real depression."
Okay.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. But, yeah. But again, almost defending it like it's a disservice to suggest to people that there's other alternatives. And so anytime I'm commenting on anything on Facebook or whatever, my stance always is, I readily admit that there are people that exercise and, mindset change and eat well will not cure everybody. I know that, but it certainly will help whatever other treatment you're doing a great deal. It won't fix it maybe, But if you're seeing a therapist, if you're doing the stuff you do and you're on an antidepressant, exercise will help. It really will. It will really help. And, that, I don't know why that's such an offensive statement to somebody, but there's people that feel offended by that.
I remember my friend Cindy Chavez once made an interesting suggestion along these lines. She says, if you're stuck on something, particularly if you're stuck on trying to figure out what your next step is because you can't think of what the next step is, she says, rearrange your room.
I've
That's
had
an
that.
interesting
Yeah.
solution.
Well, yeah. Well, I rearranging your room, changing, anything you can change, get up and move. If you have the money, get up and move, go to a new city, go do, just some action toward something new instead of being stuck. If you view, I am stuck in the abyss and I got to take any action or movement away from the abyss is where my answer is. And when you don't think you have that answer, that's a real problem. And so I have one of the hardest things I have to deal with is the people that have that, they've had that mindset for years and years and years. And to be able to move them from that, it takes a lot of work and it's slow brewing sometimes. That's why a lot of people push back on the law of attraction concept.
Sure.
For those, that is, a lot of those people hate the law of attraction concept. Because it's not going to reinforce. At the end of the day, there's I know you see the post all the time, the Facebook post. There's nobody coming to save you. This is a job you got to do yourself.
Right.
Oh my goodness! When somebody gets hold of that, victim blaming, they go and it's like. So I try not to get involved in this thing. But I want to ask the question: okay, if that's victim blaming, say you got to save yourself, who's coming to save you? Who is it? You're just resigning to your stuck. You're resigning to that concept. You're just, I don't know.
It's a fascinating and sad thing all at once. I remember having a conversation with somebody. You'll remember a few years ago, I edited a book that you contributed to, where we collected a bunch of stories from people around the world telling law of attraction manifestation stories. And there was one person who originally wanted to contribute to it, and she actually wrote something up, but I didn't end up using it in the book because of this exact issue. She essentially took the position you took, that anybody who has anything to say about victim mindsets is blaming. Just uttering anything at all is blaming the victim.
Yeah.
And what was really, it was sad, but what was also poignant about it is that within about a month after we published that book, after I finished editing it and you guys had submitted all your stuff, and we had, I think there were like 50, 55 stories in there. We got that whole thing done. We published it. A month later, she had been in practice as a therapist and she shuttered her doors. She closed down.
Wow.
And basically removed her entire presence from the internet. And I
Really?
kept thinking to myself, wow, that's about as extreme a victim response as I've ever seen.
Yeah. Well, defending that, and that's a big divide, in psychology today. And there's a lot of people that just really, they want to own their victimhood. They want to own they'll defend it to the very end. They'll I can't help this. There's nothing I can do about this. And I have never seen a real case of somebody, there's nothing you can do about it. There's always action to take. There's always something. There's always starting something. And, but these people tend to, one of the, interesting thing, I mentioned the story a long time ago. So, I'll keep it relatively short, but years ago, I'm saying it out loud, so it's funny nowadays, but I met this lady in a psych ward. So, it's funny because I didn't really belong in the psych ward, but I was just sort of hanging out. So I would check myself into a psych ward, eat well for a couple of days and sort of hide out and then check myself out. You know what I mean?
Got it.
So
Yeah. Sure.
I'm playing with the system. All right. I'm playing with the system. So I meet this lady in there and she's, there's a lot of people there that really needed to be there. I didn't really, and I don't know if she really needed to be there. She felt she did, and she was overweight, and she felt that she's had very low self-esteem. So she was trying to, she was not suicidal, but not feeling great. Right. So anyway, so we start talking. We become pretty good friends. She had a great sense of humor, and it was sort of us in the psych ward, almost like this surreal event, watching what goes on in the psych ward, which is beyond understanding. Mm-hmm. And we're sort of watching from the sidelines going, oh, wow. And, it was fascinating. Mm-hmm. So I was basically hiding out because I owed a bunch of bookies a bunch of money and I had nowhere to be. I was basically homeless. Right. So I didn't really I never told that story in there. I just basically said I was depressed and sort of lost all my stuff. And, so when it came time to leave, she, look, here, if you need a place to stay, here's my address, here's $20 for gas. And I was like, wow, I mean, you met some dude in a psych ward and you're inviting him home for I thought that was bizarre. And I had nowhere to go. So I said, well, let's just see where that goes. So I go find her, ended up staying there. And I quickly learned that she was, in her mind, she was the victim of everything. Her mother was bad. Her brother was bad. Her son, who was very young, was bad toward her. Her current husband, who she was separated from, is bad. And we had all this bad going on, and everybody was doing things to her. And it was, and I was like, oh my gosh. So after about 3 or 4 days of that, I just got out of there. I just, I said, oh, I can't handle this. This is, she was never, it was just complaining about everybody and everything.
Right.
So years later, I'm in recovery and, she did let me stay there 4 days. She did give me some money while I was there. And so I said, look, when I get in recovery, part of my recovery is making amends and paying people back. Okay. So I wanted to find her and I actually remember her last name. Very common last name, but I remember her son, who had an unusual first name. So I found him easy, and then I found her. Mm-hmm. And so I just wanted to send her a message and say, I'm sorry. I owe you some money. I'm going to send you some money. And I'm really sorry to have misled you and have left without any notice. But I saw her Facebook page, and all those years later, it was the same story. Everybody's mean to me. Her son, who is grown now, was like, she's like, nobody pays attention to me. Nobody wants to be around me. Blah, blah, blah. And her son had commented underneath, Mom, get over yourself. There's nobody doing this but you. And she had a whole bunch of postings under that. I said, I'm probably not going to contact her. I probably don't want to jump in the middle of that, but I was able to find out where she was at, and I sent her a money order, and just anonymously just sent it to her and said, look, I owe you some money from years ago, put her name on it. It was cash. So I was able to check and see it was cash. So I felt good about making amends, but I did not want to be around her energy. After all those years, 20 years had passed, and she had not changed her victim mindset. It could be a lifetime curse.
It raises the question in my mind. Well, it raises lots of questions. I'm sure it raises questions in people's minds who are listening. But one of the biggest questions it raises in my mind is there are many people who have said, and I've agreed with them, that there are some people who go through stuff in life and they keep repeating it over and over again because they haven't experienced enough pain with it to want to make a change. And yet, as you just described, there's somebody who's apparently going to just keep doing it for a lifetime.
Yeah.
And so it makes you wonder, is it actually possible to not have a high enough threshold of pain available? Or is it that the whole theory of you have to feel enough pain, is that theory just, doesn't hold water?
I don't think it holds water to every case. I don't think the theory holds water. It's you have to have a threshold of pain is not, you know, I hear that a lot in addiction. You know, they haven't had enough pain. They haven't had enough consequences. And I know people that have unbelievable consequences that don't stop addictive behavior. So it doesn't always apply. I think pain could be a sort of certainly a catalyst that I don't want to feel this way anymore. I know heroin addicts that are thrown into jail without any detox, and they just have to brutally detox on the floor in the jail cell. They tend to never use, they quit at a higher rate than anybody else because they don't ever want to do that again. That's brutal. That's almost dying. So there is some evidence to some degree, but I do believe you have this resistant group of people who almost don't want there to be a solution and have become so comfortable in being the victim because I don't know why. I could never imagine a life like that, but they've become so comfortable in their victimhood that it's their identity and they don't want to move on from it.
It brings to mind also the idea of what's known as a comfort zone, which are almost never comfortable. Usually they're quite uncomfortable. But for whatever reason, maybe because of familiarity, they seem more comfortable to the person than the alternative.
Yes. Yeah. And comfort zones they're damaging because nothing grows in a comfort zone. It's stagnant. Everything's stagnant in a comfort zone. It's a nice place to visit occasionally, I guess, when you need some rest. But, you know, getting out of the comfort zone is where growth takes place. And there's some people that just want to stay in their cocoon. And, I've met a handful of people who are so negative and so defending of their disability or their perceived disability. They just thrive. One guy I know, he has a pattern. I've worked with him for a while and before I quit working with him, he has a pattern. He would go to see a therapist and, the therapist a traditional therapist will spend 2 or 3 sessions letting him say whatever he wants to say, you know, and sort of agreeing with him, you know, well, my mom does this, my dad does this, blah, blah, all these people do these things. So the therapist will listen for a while to build a rapport and sort of passively agreeing with them. And then at some point, the therapist is going to have to say, okay, now what are you going to be able to do about this? What action can you take? And every time when we got to that point where it was going to be action he would take, he would never go back. He'd never go back. I'm the victim here. I shouldn't have to change it. They should change the way every single therapist they try. And of course, I'm seeing him from day one going, I can't fix those people. I can only fix you. I can, I can't be fixed as long as they keep behaving that way. It's like, I mean, it's like, everybody, when you have the narrative that everybody is against you, the world is falling apart and all that, and you own that, so and so, and this person is not a real healthy 60-year-old man. I don't know how much time he has left, but I don't see, and I always believe anything can happen. So I hope that's a change, but I can't imagine the purpose of that life is to sit there and complain and be the victim the entire time. There's nobody, and nobody wants to be around it. Nobody wants to be around it. Who wants to be around that energy?
Yeah, understandable. Sure.
Yeah.
It almost sounds like, I forget what they call it, but it's the mind, the term that I'm trying to think of means the mindset of wanting to be right. It sounds like he wants to be right.
Yes.
And he is going out of his way to defend his rightness.
Yes.
How all these people are at fault and it's not him. It's almost become a quest. I must show the world that this is true.
There's an old recovery slogan in 12-step program. Is it more important to be right or more important to be happy? And, a lot of people will choose it's more important to be right.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, and it's just, it's a sad concept because it's just, at the end of the day, when nobody wants to be around you, your own kids don't want to be around you. You don't want to, you're going to, the miserable existence of believing that the entire world has teamed up against you, is a really sad way to live. And if you can't break out of that, I can't imagine having a much worse life than that. I know people that have experienced some terrible things that bounce back and have incredible lives. But it's a shame. It really is sad.
I remember I told you one time about a woman I had dated who we had great chemistry. We got along well, and everything was good until I found out that she had a tremendous negative victim mindset to the point where she was convinced, and this is the way she expressed it to me, she was looking for somebody to wither away and die with, which I couldn't. I couldn't even fathom that one. Yeah.
Put that on your Tinder profile.
Yeah, right. That's definitely going to pull them in.
Wow. But you, a lot of times people are looking for people to commiserate with and support the victim mindset. And, I'll allow that. I mean, it's not my job to make everybody, if that's what you want to do, but my job, I think, if I'm engaged to try to help, is to get them to see that's the choice you're making. And, when you don't have any power, or you feel you don't have any power, and you refuse to find an area where you can take action, you succumb to the concept that you're the victim, and every single person in your orbit is against you. And you're right at that point, because that's all you're attracting. Who wants to be around that energy? Nobody.
In fact, when I shared this same story with another friend just a few days ago, actually, I said to her, so, I mean, obviously, what do you do? What can you possibly do in a situation like that? And her answer was very concise. She says, turn and run the other direction.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. No, I'm with that friend. Yeah. I feel for people that are there, but if that's the case, that is so not me, and I cannot be drawn down with that kind of stuff. So I don't have those people in my orbit, and it doesn't matter who they are. I mean, it could be, that's what Justin and I were talking about earlier. When you get on a pity pot and you stay there and you defend it, that is not a healthy way to live. You got to find doesn't mean you can't be down one day and feel, I mean, everybody's going to have those days. But always looking for moving up that emotional guidance scale, always looking toward, there's a solution on the other end of this. Maybe I'm having a bad day and I'm not going to get to it today, but I'm going to move up that emotional guidance scale tomorrow and move forward. Always looking toward that. But instead of, this is my lot in life forever, and if I just found the right people who would agree with my victimization and do what I wanted them to do, then it's going to be fine. And that's what a terrible way to live.
I will say that there is one redeeming value I can think of where somebody like that is concerned, somebody who is so heavily stuck and deliberately unwilling to shift the mindset. They become a tremendous example to other people about where they don't want to be.
Yes, completely. And I do think we have examples in life like that. I really do. I believe we have people out there that maybe the point of their existence is to be that example that you don't want to. I can't imagine that you would choose that role, but maybe that's what people are there for. I don't know why, but it's certainly something. In a different comparative way. When I went to a Gamblers Anonymous meeting when I was 28, 29, and the thing I noticed immediately, there were some 60-year-old dudes there that had gambled their entire life. They had nothing. They were living out of their car. Their families weren't speaking to them. Most of them hadn't showered. They were disgusting. Their dental hygiene was terrible. And believe it or not, I was able to say, I can't do that. I don't want to stop gambling, but I don't want to be that 60-year-old dude that never quits, and you just concede that life. I just can't be that.
Mm.
And so sometimes a negative can serve as a positive to other people who are willing to see that's an example of not what to do.
So since we always like to try to find a way to finish on an upswing, and we're down in pretty negative territory at this point, let's go this way. The fact that I'm able to see that that's not what I want. I don't want to end up like that. That is a turning point.
It is.
That's a point where I can kind of pivot on that and say, all right, well, I'm not willing to go down that path. What am I willing to do instead? And it almost doesn't even matter what my answer is as long as it's different from what I'm doing right now.
Absolutely. And one of the key factors in all this, Walt, that is so important is when you realize that no matter where you're at, how bad things are, when you can accept that I'm going to, as long as I can start anything, there's hope, there's a chance. And once you can accept that an action oriented thing has the option of, I'm going to start this, I'm going to take action, then that momentum will go. When you're stuck in the pit of it all, and there's nothing, there's no movement, there's no change, and all you can see is all of this goo in front of you and nothing, you got to change from that environment, do something. When you realize that, that's so exciting, because once you get there, and I've had some really bad days, and today I don't have bad days. I'm able to, my days aren't perfect, but I told you, we talked, over the weekend about some stuff I had a little issue with. Yeah.
Right.
I'm not claiming I don't have a perfect life and I don't ever have any moments, but I do promise that this is, I never give up the idea that I know there's an answer on the other side. I might not be able to see it where I'm at now. And that's why I'm begging our listeners, no matter where you're at, there is a movement forward. And one of the greatest gifts you can give your kids is not allowing them to live in a mindset, hopefully not allowing or encouraging them not to think that they are the victim of all this. There's always going to be an action that people can take. And it just required, and it might not be that day, but just moving forward is always that right direction. And I've seen miracles in my life. I've had miracles happen in my life, multiple miracles. And I also had the day of total despair, total desperation. And I can operate knowing I have the remedy, and it was starting, beginning, moving, go. It is the remedy.
So just start.
Just start.
It's the beginning. It's not the solution all completely, but it's the beginning of the solution.
Yes. And sometimes you can't see the solution at all. But if you can just accept the beginning of the solution, that's all you need to know. You don't have to have the whole staircase. I just need to see that next step, or see a step. I know there's other steps. Let me just get that step out of the way. Move toward that step.
Yep, because if you keep taking the steps, you're going to find the end of the staircase at some point.
Yes, absolutely.
That's the one good thing. Staircases don't go forever. Thank goodness.
Thank goodness, yeah. I mean, I've never really thought about it, but you're right.
Yeah, they come to an end. Like, oh, I got to the end of the staircase.
Yes,
Hooray.
excellent.
Wow. Yeah, that's the day of celebration. Well, we went through a tough minefield today, because we really got dug into the rabbit hole of that victim mindset, and it's yucky, it's sticky, it's gooey. I think that was the word you used. It really is. And yet, despite all that, we still found a way out.
Always find a way out. And the one thing I promise our listeners, I have never seen a scenario that there wasn't a way out. And I've seen some bad scenarios. If you're willing to go, if you're willing to take that action, I've never seen a scenario that we couldn't come on the other side of.
That's very encouraging. So on that note, thank you once again, Joel. As usual, really great conversation, really in depth. Man, we know how to just go in and just shred it. We just take it apart and we take it into little tiny pieces until we got the whole thing figured out. Man.
Absolutely. Very good to see you, Walt.
Good to see you too. And thank you to our podcast listeners everywhere. We'll see you all next time here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.